Margaret Mead said that we should never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. And I know that's true because I'm a witness. I saw it happen in my own community. I saw the world change in my local school division. Little Montgomery County public schools in the mountains on the edge of rural Southwest Virginia. Now, I work for Virginia Commonwealth University's Autism Center for Excellence now, but I worked with Montgomery County schools for over 30 years. And the change I want to tell you a little bit about today started back in 1990. At that time, special education services in Montgomery County were organized in a very traditional way. Students with disabilities were clustered together with other students who had similar disabilities. They received their special education mostly in separate classrooms that were in kind of centralized locations scattered throughout the county. And for a lot of those kids, that meant a long bus ride out of their neighborhood to go to school. If you were a family with a child with a disability prior to 1990 and you moved into Montgomery County, there were a number of questions we would need to ask you before we could figure out where your child should go to school and what class your child should be in. We need to ask you to describe your child's disability. We need to look at all the services and supports that your child needed before we could make that decision. After 1990, if you're the same family and you moved into Montgomery County, the questions we would ask got a whole lot simpler. There were really only two of them. Where do you live would tell us what school you would go to, and how old is your child would tell us pretty much what grade and what class your child is going to be in. And that was true for everybody. Everybody. Not just kids who can keep up with the academic work that most of the kids are doing without a whole lot of modifications. Not just kids who don't have any issues with their behavior. Not just kids who don't require a lot of really specialized supports and services. Everybody. It started happening in 1990, and 20 years later it was still true. The world changed in Montgomery County Public Schools. How did it happen? Well, it started with a really simple idea, and the idea was this: that neighborhood schools should be designed to welcome all of the children who live in the neighborhood. That was the idea. Now, you know, I said this happened back in 1990, and at that time, inclusion, which was called integration back then, was really taking the special education world by storm. The idea that kids with disabilities could get their special ed services in regular schools and regular classes. Lots and lots of people were talking and thinking about that. Any special ed conference you went to back in 1990, that was the hot topic. Lots and lots of people were writing and reading and thinking and trying and interested in it in 1990. And there were people who were interested in it in Montgomery County too. Especially one little group of friends who liked to get together every once in a while and sit on one of their porches and talk and save the world like educators love to do. And this little group of friends thought that this idea, this simple idea, was really possible. Not only that, they didn't see any reason why they couldn't do it right here. So you know what they did? They made a little plan with 5 parts, and they wrote it on a napkin. And they just started doing it. I'm not kidding. That's really how it started. Now, Marty Snell at the University of Virginia says that inclusion is not about fitting kids with special needs into regular schools. Inclusion is about creating schools where everybody fits. And that was very much the idea that this group of friends believed in, that it could be the mission of the school to meet the needs of the kids in the attendance area. They really, really believed in that idea. And I'm not going to stand here and try to tell you that that little group of friends and their plan on their napkin are solely the reason that the world changed in Montgomery County schools, because that's not true. There were brave, committed, pioneering parents and principals and teachers. There were amazing kids. Our schools already enjoyed a high level of trust from the people in the community, and that was important. There were leaders who were willing to step out into the unknown to try to make something good happen for kids. There were so many reasons. But this group of friends and that plan on that napkin, it was important. In fact, I don't know that the world would have really changed the way it did without that plan. And so that's what I want to share with you here today. Just in case you're thinking about changing the world where you live, the plan on the napkin might be helpful to you too. The first part of the plan was we got to articulate the vision. We have to make it very simple and clear exactly what we want to do, what it's going to look like, and why we want to do it. What are the outcomes we're going to get? We want to create neighborhood schools that really work for all the kids in the neighborhood. What's that going to look like? It's going to look like kids going to school with their brothers and sisters and neighbors instead of riding the bus all the way across the county. It's going to look like general ed teachers and special ed teachers planning together and teaching together and learning from each other. It's going to look like a lot of different kinds of instruction going on because kids learn in a whole lot of different ways. That's what it's going to look like. We put it in Montgomery County, we put it on a one-pager, one side of one page, and we said it hundreds of times, and we gave it to hundreds of people. Which brings me to another point. Anytime you start on something new, you're going to have some people who are already there with you. Their attitude is going to be, what took you so long? Let's go. Come on, we should have been doing this a long time ago. And you're going to have another group of people whose attitude is going to be, when hell freezes over, there's no way, no how I'm getting on board with that. We came to affectionately refer to this group of people as the Stones. Then there's another large group of people in the middle who really haven't made up their mind yet about what they think about this. They could go either way based on what their experiences are. So we got some good advice early on, and this was it. Don't focus on the Stones. Focus on those people who are already with you. Focus on those people who hit the ground running. Give them resources. Take barriers out of their way. Be the wind at their back, because they will go out there and they will make it happen in 100 little places, and they will bring those people in the middle along. And that turned out to be really good advice, and it brings me to the next part of the plan on the napkin. And that is listen to people. If you want this vision to become reality, then it has to belong to other people too. People have to make the vision their own. They have to talk about it and think about it and have input into it, and that means it's going to look different ways in different places. We had, in Montgomery County, we had principals who were in that group of people who got it already and hit the ground running, and we had principals in schools who were not so sure, and they needed to sit back and study it a little bit more and watch and see what happened with other people, and they wanted to go at a different pace. That had to be okay. We had a range of approaches in our schools, from one elementary school that started with kindergarten one year and brought everybody that was kindergarten age into the school. The next year they did kindergarten and first. The next year kindergarten first and second. And they added a grade each year until after 6 years they had the entire school, the entire attendance area, all the kids were attending their school. To one of our high schools, that took a year, getting to know the kids who would be coming into the school and their families, getting the teachers prepared, setting up a let's bring them home kind of mentality going on in the school. And then they brought everybody in the following year using what the principal called the Geronimo approach. And we had a lot of things in between. But one size doesn't fit all. The vision needs to belong to the people, and that means that they need to be able to do it their way. Which brings me to the third part of the plan on the napkin. A lot of times when we start trying to do something different, the policies and procedures that we had in place to do things the old way don't really work anymore. They don't support us in getting our work done. In fact, they become barriers. So if we're going to change, really change, we've got to look at those policies and procedures that we're bumping up against and change them. In Montgomery County, this was the big paradigm shift for us. It was away from the idea that special education is a place. We had to start looking at what are those supports and services in those classes that kids are getting. What is that special instruction? What does that look like? And how can we make that happen in other places with more people delivering it? How can we get it out of there? We had to stop thinking about special education as a place that contained a lot of resources that we brought kids to, and start thinking of special education as a flexible system of supports and services that we could take to kids. There's not an educator out there, I don't believe, that doesn't want to make a positive difference in the lives of children. And that's why the fourth part of the plan on the napkin is really important. We have to create transformative experiences for people. Our leaders have to create the opportunity for that. A lot of people cannot imagine what this would look like. They need to be able to go and visit people who are doing it and see it happen. They need to talk to people that have been there and are trying it. Those people who hit the ground running, that group that's out in front, they're out there doing it, they're overcoming challenges every day. They're having amazing experiences. They need to get up in front of people and talk about it. Parents are witnessing incredible changes in the lives of their children. They're powerful and they're inspirational. This is too important to leave to chance. Leaders have to, if we really want to change, have to create opportunities for people to get together and share this stuff and hear this stuff so they can be inspired and motivated and see that they are part of something really big and really important. Educators are hungry for that. They've got to have that. And then, of course, at some point, there's the last point on the plan on the napkin. You've got to actually teach people how to do it. There's certainly a lot of training that teachers need in collaborative teaching and planning, instructional strategies and disability issues and all kinds of stuff that has to happen. But how many times do schools start with this and just start with training people, start focusing on the how without spending nearly enough time on the why? So the people who are getting the training, they don't know what the big vision is. They certainly don't feel like they've had any input into it. A lot of the policies and procedures they're working with are making it hard for them to do this new thing. And they can't even really imagine what it's going to look like if it's working. There's nothing to hang that training on. So people don't really change. And you know, we know something about change. Change is not a mystery. Change follows a very predictable cycle. We have the status quo, the way things are, and then we insert a foreign element into it. Let's say we insert a child into a school who would never have attended that school before, or we insert a request for teachers to start teaching in a way that they've never been asked to teach before. And at first it seems kind of cool and people are like, oh, this is going to be neat, this is kind of awesome, this is good. And then what we know is that when the shine wears off, it's going to start getting to, oh, this is a little tricky, you know, this is a little harder than we thought. And then what we know is we're going to run into some hard pushback. In the literature, it's actually called chaos, period, where people that, oh, this is really awesome, to this is tricky, is going to change to this is awful. This was a mistake. We should never have done this. I can't do this. And this is part of the change process. And if we can stick with it and we can support people through it, they come out the other side and they have actually developed some new behaviors. And we go from this is awful to, well, this is, it's okay. It's not that bad. And then over time, those new behaviors become integrated into the way we do things, and it gets awesome again. That's the way change works. It's predictable. I think in schools what we too often do is we bounce off of that chaos stage. When we hit that chaos stage, we don't stick with people until they can come out the other side. We back off instead, and then what gets created is a little shadow system of the old way. And things don't really change. And that's how a powerful, life-changing thing like inclusion becomes a placement option on the continuum of placements, and that's it. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to go through all that chaos? Well, 3 years in Montgomery County, we had William and Mary come down and look at our kids' achievement, and what we found is that the reading and math achievement of our students with disabilities jumped way up in the first 3 years. We found that the achievement of our students without disabilities increased a little bit. We couldn't completely attribute that to inclusion though, because there were a lot of other things going on in the county, a lot of other initiatives. But what's important about this is that what we found is the same thing that's been found out there again and again and again across the country with inclusion. When it's done well, there are tremendous benefits academically for kids with disabilities, and there is no negative impact on students without disabilities. But there's another reason that it's worth it, that I think may be even more important. And I want to tell you a little story that illustrates this. I said in Montgomery County we've been doing inclusion for over 20 years, so it's just the way that we do things. Generations of kids have come through school together. And we forget sometimes when kids move into the county from outside how different this is. For a lot of kids, it's a really new experience being in a class with kids with disabilities. And we forget it because we're so used to it. It's the way that things are here now. So this story came to me from a friend of mine who teaches 5th grade. I'll call her Beverly. And it happened one year when she had a young man in her class with autism. We'll call him Eric. And it's the end of the year in 5th grade, and the 5th grade classes are going over to middle school to take the tour and look around and eat lunch, and they're all so excited about going over to middle school. A young man in Beverly's class said, "How come Eric is getting to go on all those trips to middle school and we only got to go one time?" And this was a young man who moved in during the year from out of the county, so the whole inclusion thing was new for him anyway. Beverly said, "Well, you know how Eric is. It takes him a while to get used to things. He needs a few extra trips so that he can get comfortable, and then he can feel as excited about going to middle school as you are." And this young man said, "Yeah, why is he like that?" So Beverly thought, well, we really should take some time. When these kids move in, we should take some time with them. So she took a few minutes and she gave a little 5-minute talk about autism. And she said you could hear a pin drop in the room. And when she finished her talk, this same young man with all the questions said, "Is there a cure for that?" And Beverly opened her mouth to answer him, and all she hears a voice come over from the corner of the room, and a little girl said, "Yeah, there's a cure." And Beverly wisely kept her mouth shut. And this little girl said, "We're the cure. It's not a problem when he's with us. We're the cure. It's not a problem when he's with us." By the year 2040, the number of Americans with disabilities or over the age of 65 will have more than doubled what it was in the year 2000, comprising well over 20% of the population. The National Center for Self-Determination says that including children with significant disabilities in regular schools and regular classes is the most powerful thing we can do as a culture to prepare the next generation for this change. And things can change. I'm a witness. Never doubt that a thoughtful, committed, group of people can change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. Thank you.